Right. We are live. It's not letting me show, but oh well. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the PMP. My name is TJ Riddell, and we are back again. It's a Tuesday night. I know I said Thursday nights, but I was kind of busy the last Thursday at work because I have a real life. But as you know, I'm by myself tonight. K-Dub wasn't able to make it tonight. He's got other arrangements going on. So let's get into it, folks. Let's start off with some NFL news before we get to college news, and then we'll essentially talk about the conference champions. My prediction on who's going to be the conference champions this season. Right, so here we go. So there's been some roster cuts today in the past week, and I'm just going to go down the list and let everybody know who cut who. Starting with the Arizona Cardinals, they cut two offensive linemen, Greg Long and Haggy. I cannot say his name, but he is cut. A defensive lineman named Kingsley Kiki. A corner, Breon Borders. Ronnie Rivers, the running back. That's all for Arizona. Atlanta, they cut four guys. A punter, a defensive back, Trey Webb. A linebacker, Rashad Smith. And tight end Tucker Fisk. The punter is Seth Vernon. And Baltimore, they cut five guys. Pretty big college names here. Corey Clement, he got cut. He's running back for Baltimore. Brett Hundley, quarterback, used to play for UCLA. Defensive back Robert Jackson. Two defensive backs actually for Baltimore. Denzel Williams as well. And then last but not least, Devin Williams for the Baltimore Ravens. Okay. For the Buffalo Bills, they cut six guys. Two offensive linemen, two corners, one linebacker, and one tight end. That's a lot of guys that they cut. Same thing with Carolina. They cut a bunch of guys here. One running back, one receiver, one tight end, one offensive lineman, one linebacker, and two cornerbacks. Although the Carolina Panthers let go Nate Becker, he was claimed by the Packers. Pretty interesting. Chicago Bears, they cut a lot of guys as well. They have a lot of tension going on over there as well. So they cut four linebackers, one corner, one tight end, one safety, and one defensive lineman. Cincinnati, they only cut three people, one running back, one receiver, and one corner. The wide receiver's name is Puka Williams. Pretty sure a lot of people know that name. Cleveland only cut two people, surprisingly. Derek Dillon, wide receiver, and Reggie Robinson, the second defensive back. For Dallas, we cut some guys, five guys. Corner, Kyron Brown. Fullback, Ryan Nall. I think he actually signed with Dallas this year. Tight end, Ian Bunning. Wide receiver, Ty Freifogel. And defensive lineman, Austin Fauliu. I can't say his name. The Broncos, they only cut three guys. Safety, Jamar Johnson. Running back, Max Borghi. And wide receiver, Travis Fulgham. Travis Fulgham's been around the block many a time, so it's kind of not surprising there. The Lions, they cut two tight ends, one center, one safety, and one wide receiver. The two tight ends, Nolan Gavon and Garrett Griffin. I mean, it's kind of hard for Coach Campbell to cut people. I mean, he's built a pretty good relationship around them cats. All right. So now we get to the Packers, which they cut a lot of guys. They kicked off a kicker, a long snapper, a center, a corner, two linebackers, one running back, one tight end, and one guard. So two offensive linemen are gone. Two linebackers are gone for Green Bay. And two special teams members are gone for Green Bay. Now for Houston, they got rid of two wide receivers, two defensive linemen, one of them's a defensive end, a running back, and a long snapper. I mean, whew, hurt my feelings seeing guys get cut like this. Now the Indianapolis Colts, they cut Isaiah Ford, wide receiver, two offensive tackles, Jason Spriggs and Brandon Kemp, another wide receiver, Michael Young Jr., and corner, Alexander Myers. Now, Jacksonville, they cut five guys, one quarterback, Jake Luton, has been around the block, running back, Matt Colburn, the second, Ryan McDaniel, linebacker, Wyatt Ray, and kicker, Elliott Fry. The Chiefs, they've only cut four people, one of them claimed by the Titans, and that's Lonnie Johnson Jr. He's a corner. Two wide receivers, Omar Bayless and Gary Jennings, and offensive tackle, I'm not even going to say his name because it is fudged up, okay? Now, Las Vegas, they only cut three guys, two wide receivers, and one defensive tackle. Their divisional rivals, the Los Angeles Chargers, they cut one safety, Skylar Thomas, one wide receiver, one quarterback, one defensive lineman, and a center. Now, for Los Angeles, it's kind of sad for me because I saw this earlier. Cameron Dicker, hook him. I hope you get on a team, or at least be a part of the XFL or USFL in the near future. Luis Perez, who had a really decent career in arena football. I didn't think he was going to make it through for the Rams this season. Jamal Pettigrew, tight end. Adrian Ely, tackle. Defensive back, Caesar Dancy Williams, and wide receiver Warren Jackson. Now the Dolphins, they got rid of one offensive lineman, one wide receiver, one defensive lineman, and one corner. The Minnesota Vikings, they got rid of a fullback, an outside linebacker, defensive lineman, wide receiver, and corner. They have not posted the New England Patriots roster cuts just yet, but the Saints, my goodness, they have a lot of guys cut, and two of them were claimed by the Rams and the Browns. So you have 5 DBs cut, one wide receiver cut, 2 defensive linemen cut, or actually 3. One of them's a D tackle and a defensive end. I mean, that's a lot right there. So that's insane. The Giants, they got rid of Josh Rivas, offensive guard, 2 defensive backs, Michael Jacket and Jared Wilson. Austin Proel, he's a wide receiver. Gavin Heslop, he's a defensive back. And Jeremiah Hall, a tight end for the Giants. Then you got the New York Jets. Keyshawn Abram, wide receiver. Tim Ward, defensive end. Cornerback Luke Barco, Barku. I can't say people's names for some reason tonight. Derek Kelly, he's an offensive lineman, and another wide receiver, Rashad Davis. The Philadelphia Eagles, they have released two wide receivers, an offensive lineman who signed with the Steelers, William Dunkel. Dunkel's a good name, by the way. Ali Fayyad, he's a linebacker, and safety Jared Maiden. For the Pittsburgh Steelers, they cut five players. One of them special teams, two of them are offensive linemen. One of them's a wide receiver, and then the last one is a defensive tackle. San Francisco 49ers, they got rid of 6 people. 2 defensive linemen. One of them's a DB, one of them's a cornerback, one of them's a fullback, and another one's a wide receiver. Number Seattle Seahawks, they got rid of 2 guards, 1 corner, 1 defensive back, and 1 wide receiver. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, woo, 6 of them. So they got rid of 2 offensive tackles, 1 tight end, 1 DB, 1 wide receiver, and 1 outside linebacker. The Titans, wow. So they made a lot of roster cuts here. They got rid of, the most notable name I see is Michael Griffin II. He's a safety. They got rid of another DB, or actually 2 DBs, 1 wide receiver, 1 center, 1 offensive lineman, 1 defensive lineman, 1 running back, and that's pretty much it for Tennessee. In Washington, the Commanders, they only kicked out 3 guys off their roster. Troy Apke and Devontae Bosby, both defensive backs, and Dion Calhoun, offensive guard. And that's it as far as the roster cuts thus far. And that's just the beginning, folks. We're going to see a lot more roster cuts as the preseason goes along. You start with 75 and you drop down to 53. So it's part of business. A lot of people don't understand that. It is a part of business. And hey, it is what it is. You just didn't give it your all. So I'll be right back. I got to turn the lighting on real quick. So that way we can actually see my face a little bit better. And voila, there we are. So another thing I want to talk about is SMU. All right, we're getting into college now. SMU, whew, they're getting a little cocky before the season started. And I don't even have them actually winning the division this year. Or the conference this year. I actually have them in the mix, but they're not going to win the division. In my opinion, they're not going to win the division thus far. We haven't seen any film or anything just yet, but I really do feel like that SMU is starting to build momentum around themselves. But TCU just got Sonny Dykes, who was a former coach for SMU. And it's just ironic because Gary Patterson goes to Texas. Sonny Dykes goes from SMU to TCU. And SMU's got a billboard saying this is Mustang Country. So, what do you do if you're TCU? Well, let's take a look at their all-time series record. So they're 51-42-7 against SMU. So their winning percentage is pretty good. SMU though has won the last two games, the very last two games in two seasons against TCU at Amon G. Carter, which says a lot because that's a pretty tough stadium to play in the state of Texas as far as college goes. But they're going to be playing in Gerald Ford Stadium this season. And TCU last time they played against SMU at SMU, they actually beat them at their own facility. So, and they didn't just beat them; they beat them by 11 points. So that's a pretty big. Or I'm sorry, they didn't beat them by 11 points. They beat them pretty bad by 30 points. So it's a pretty big statement for SMU to say this is Mustang Country when they barely beat them the last two times. The last time they had a big victory over TCU, I would say in 1985, 56-21 when they were ranked number 6 in the country in 1985, back when the Southwest Conference was around. And I got to tell you, folks, this is getting interesting for the battle for the Iron Skillet. You know, this is a pretty big rivalry here in Texas. I mean, it dates back to when the Southwest Conference was aligned. So I don't foresee TCU actually beating SMU. I would have to look at the film and watch the game as we go. But that's just my week one feel. I like to feel the process of each team and actually go through their training reports. And really, I haven't heard anything much about these two teams, injury-wise or who's improving, who's not. I mean, Max Duggan's still the quarterback for TCU, and SMU is going through a coaching change of their own. So it's going to be a pretty interesting matchup between those two teams. But do I see them two as a conference champion? I don't. But here's the teams that I picked in my preseason conference champions. So I'm going to start off with the ACC. I really do have a confidence for this team. They really have built up their team over the last couple seasons. And that team is North Carolina State. I really love what they're doing out there for their offense. Their offense is pretty lethal in that conference. I don't think Clemson's a threat anymore. Now you're starting to see Wake Forest pop up. North Carolina's kind of in the mediocre stage. Miami's having a really good offseason. I mean, it's going to be interesting for the Wolfpack. I really do think that they're going to be the top dogs this season for, no pun intended on dogs, but I really do think they're going to be on top of the ACC this year. So the Big Ten Conference, okay. A lot of people are saying Michigan's going to make a comeback or Ohio State's going to have their revenge. I say the Buckeyes are going to have their revenge, and they're going to be in the college football playoff. I really do think they're going to be in the college football playoff. For one, they didn't really lose a whole lot compared to all these Big Ten teams. Neither did Michigan, but they really did lose a lot of defensive players. Michigan did. But Ohio State is built around C.J. Stroud, and I really do think they have probably the most offensive team in the country. And not only that, their defense is very, very underrated. They get looked past a lot because of last season against Michigan. And I don't think they're going to let that happen again. Um, I I do think that Ohio State is going to come back with a vengeance, and I do think that Ohio State has a message for everybody in the college football world. That includes Alabama, Georgia. Some people are saying Texas A&M. A lot of people are saying Oklahoma, Texas, and speaking of Texas and Oklahoma, we're going into the Big 12 conference. This was a hard one for me because I really do think that Texas is going to be good this season, but how good? How good is Texas going to be good this season? Well, let's start off with Oklahoma. They're kind of going through the same motion as SMU and TCU, like I talked about earlier, coaching changes, but not just a coaching change, a coaching staff change. And you lost half your starters through the transfer portal. You lost a lot of guys through the draft. The only good thing about this year is they got a great coach coming in, Brent Venables. He's coming in to coach for Oklahoma. Then you got Dylan Gabriel as a transfer. But do I see them winning the conference? No. Now we move into Texas. Texas banger of a offseason. Much credit to Steve Sarkisian for hiring Kyle Flood, and Kyle Flood doing his thing for the offensive line recruiting, and Coach Sark doing his thing in the recruiting process. But you just lost Junior Angelau and Isaiah Naylor, the transfer from Wyoming, for the entire season. And we still don't know who's the quarterback for Texas. Is it going to be Hudson? Is it going to be Quinn? Who knows? Do I think they're going to have a better season? Absolutely. I got them in a 9-win season, but still no conference championship just yet. There's going to be a lot of patience going along with this team because they're a young team. They're playing against Alabama this season, and Alabama's more seasoned than Texas. Then you go to Baylor, defending Big 12 champions. I mean, they just lost their starting quarterback to South Florida. He transferred to South Florida. So we don't really know what to expect out of Baylor. Are they going to be the same as last year? Coach Aranda turned that program around from a 1-win team to a Big 12 championship team and a Sugar Bowl champion team, beating Ole Miss. Take for granted that they lost Matt Corral due to injury, but you got to admit that defense is tough to play against. But I don't think they're going to win the conference this season. Who do I think is going to win the conference? Well, Mike Gundy. I think Mike Gundy and the Oklahoma State Cowboys are going to come in and shock the world yet again. Beating OU, beating Texas, beating possibly Baylor or Texas in the conference championship game. I mean, Oklahoma State has a lot of talent, and their quarterback, Spencer Sanders, who's started ever since he was a young pup, he knows that offense, and he really improved last season. And also, you got to give credit where credit's due. Oklahoma State, their defense is really athletic, and they are really tough to play against, I mean, look at the Texas game last year. They gave up three turnovers against Oklahoma State, and they could have won that game. But what bailed Oklahoma State out was that defense last season. So I think Oklahoma State's going to come up with a better strategy on offense, and they're going to be better on defense, even though they lost Malcolm Rodriguez. That's just one player. I mean, Oklahoma State usually has really good talent anyway in the secondary and the linebacking core. Now we move into the Pac-12. Okay, so this team is not Oregon. It's not Utah. It's a team that really got a hold of the recruiting trail, and it all started with a controversial coach leaving his old school to this 6-star school. So he went from one blue blood to another blue blood, and very controversial. But USC, I think, is going to come away with the Pac-12 championship. Not only come away with the Pac-12 championship, but a possible playoff or a New Year's Six Bowl bound team right here. Because you just got Caleb Williams coming over from Oklahoma to USC. You got Jordan Addison from Pitt, who is projected to go to Texas, going to USC. And you're getting really good recruits out of the LA market. And that's what you need if you're Lincoln Riley. That's what you need as the head coach of the USC Trojans. Okay? Now, do I see them going undefeated? I don't think they're going to go undefeated, but I see them as a Pac-12 champion and possibly into the playoffs. Did I say they're going into the playoffs? No, I said possibly. So, with that being said, watch out for the Trojans this season because Lincoln Riley has a formula over there, and they actually look pretty decent this year. I looked at their spring game, and they're more action than words right now for USC. And last of the Power 5, I got the SEC Conference. Now, Georgia won the SEC, or not the SEC, that was Alabama. Alabama won the SEC championship last year, but lost to Georgia in the national championship. So, what is going to happen this season? I think Georgia's going to slip a little bit. I think A&M is definitely overhyped this season because Haynes King really did not start that much. He got injured last season, and Calzada he transferred over to LSU. So who's going to win the SEC? Basically is the point. I got the Crimson Tide running through the SEC. And I'm not saying just run through, I mean bulldoze the SEC. And I'm talking about the SEC West. I'm talking about the SEC championship game. I think it's going to be all Alabama. Definitely a playoff contender. Probably going to be in that 1 or 2 slot. And I think with Bryce Young being there, Heisman Trophy winner, he's going to have a more leadership role there. And you got Will Anderson coming back. I mean, Nick Saban's got the formula for this season. And not only that, A&M and Alabama's got a weird feud going on between Fisher and Saban. And in October 8, when Texas and OU play, A&M and Alabama play. And A&M is going to Tuscaloosa now. And A&M's had 2 wins in the last decade against Alabama. I will give them that credit. But I think the last game that A&M and Alabama played, I think Alabama looked past A&M in that game. And A&M showed them why they shouldn't look past them. And then the week after, they lose to Mississippi State. I mean, last season, A&M was not a bad team. They were just an inconsistent team. So I think Alabama is going to prove to everybody that they're still the dominant force in the SEC and also in college football. Heck, I might as well pick them as a national champion, right? But I'm not going to. Not yet, anyway. We'll get to that whenever I get a chance. But now I'm going to be talking about the group of 5. So there's going to be a lot of teams in the group of 5 that are going to be moving around. There's new teams coming up, like James Madison. They're in the Sun Belt Conference with Appalachian State, Coastal Carolina, and Louisiana, Lafayette. So you're going to see a lot of changes in the college football world in the next couple of years. And you got Houston, UCF, Cincinnati from the American Conference jumping ship to the Big 12 after OU and Texas leave, or during that process. We still don't know when Texas and OU are actually going to leave, or are they just going to wait until that contract expires in 2025 and go to the SEC then. That's the big thing. And for the American Conference, I look at them as the Power 6 conference. They have always been the Power 6 conference for me. I really do think they have a lot of talent that's overlooked, especially in UCF, Memphis, Cincinnati, Houston, SMU, Tulane, Tulsa, East Carolina. But once the American Conference has those 3 disband, and they bring in new ones like UTSA and all these other guys, what's going to happen to the American Conference? Are they just going to be looked at as another group of 5? Or are they going to be a part of the Power 5 because the Pac-12 is disbanding because of the fact that USC and UCLA are moving on? Well, we'll look into that in the future, okay? For right now, we're looking at the conference champions here. For the American Conference, it took a lot of time and thought process into this. So Cincinnati, they just lost a lot of talent. Sauce Gardner, Desmond Ridder. They had a heck of a season last year, and they competed against Alabama. The score says otherwise, but they competed against Alabama last season. I think a lot of guys underestimated the willpower of Luke Fickell and Cincinnati. Do I think they're going to win the conference? No, sadly no, because you're having a new fresh face in there. We don't know what this kid can do. We don't know what this offense is going to look like next year without Desmond Ridder. We don't know what the defense is going to look like without Sauce Gardner. Okay? So we move on to UCF. Gus Malzahn, great coach. Coached at Auburn for many, 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 many years after Tommy Tuberville did. So he has a pretty good season. Actually beats Florida in the Gasparilla Bowl, claims the ownership of Florida. Go Knights, right? I don't have them winning the conference this year. Then we move to Memphis in Tennessee, right? A lot of good talent there in those smaller Tennessee towns and also in the surrounding states around Tennessee and Memphis. Do I think they're going to win the conference? Absolutely not. SMU, they're hyping up their season, saying they're claiming the DFW area, which is Dallas, Fort Worth, for those that don't know. For those that don't know, Mustang Country is DFW area, according to SMU. But are they overhyping themselves to being the conference champions. Yes, I do. Well, who's another team that you got, TJ? Well, that's where the Houston Cougars come in. I think Dana Holgerson is a great fit for the Houston Cougars. I said this since they hired him over at Houston when he resigned from West Virginia. Dana Holgerson is doing a really good job over there in Houston. He really turned that program around, pretty much like Dave Aranda over there. And they just had a 12-2 season last year. Clayton Tune is looking like a pretty good prospect for the draft. I see them outscoring teams this year. I really do. And I got the Cougs winning the American Conference this year. Now, are they going to be a New Year's Six team or anything like the Cincinnati team of last year? Hell no. But I see them winning the conference. Now we move on to the Conference USA. This one was kind of tricky because you got teams like UAB in there, and I mean it's an overlooked conference now. I mean, it's a really overlooked conference, and it was not a hard decision for me, but I got the University of Texas of San Antonio Roadrunners winning this one. They got most of their starters coming back, and they're a very concerning team if you're a Power 5 team, and I hate to say it, but us Texas fans need to be worried about the Roadrunners. I mean, they have a lot of talent in that area going to UTSA because they're being overlooked by kids in Houston and Dallas and also in California. And these guys, they're really talented, and I could see them winning this conference very easily. And we'll just move on to the Mid-American Conference. The Mid-American Conference, probably one of the oldest conferences in college football, along with the SEC and the Big Ten. So it was kind of tricky. There's some good teams in there like Toledo, Northern Illinois, and that's who I got. Northern Illinois is going to take the Mid-American Conference, in my opinion. I think they have a really good offense. They have a good coach over there, and they get pretty good production over there. So I really do think that Northern Illinois is going to take it this year for the Mid-American Conference. Now, in the Mountain West Conference, Boise State, Fresno State, that's the teams that you think of, right? Well, there's teams like Air Force and Utah State that's saying, we beg to differ, we're a better team than them. And I tend to agree with them. I got the Air Force Falcons, Air Force Academy winning this one. They got a lot of talent coming back, just like UTSA. Not as much, but I really do think that Air Force is a very tough team to focus on because they do a little bit of triple option, but they also throw the ball. So that's a tough balance at itself, and it's a hard offense to coach right there. But if I'm Air Force, I'm glad where I'm at. Y'all just had a 12-2 season last year. Y'all were a tough team last season, and the sky's the limit for you guys. And last but not least, the Sun Belt Conference. Lafayette, Appalachian State, Coastal Carolina. Teams that have really ran through this conference in the last couple of years. Now you're adding James Madison into the mix, who's really been dominant in the FCS level, now bringing them into the FBS level. So it was a really tough call on this one. It could have gone either way, but this one, it was either going to be App State or Lafayette, but at the end of the day, I went with talent, and I went with Appalachian State. I think they got the better talent on the roster, even though Lafayette, Louisiana Lafayette, they are a good football team, and they really know how to score points, and they played tough against Texas last season, but I really do think that Appalachian State's going to take the Sun Belt. So that concludes the conference champions. That concludes the news. And now I'm going to go ahead and cut this pod a little short tonight. It is a Tuesday. It's just a makeup for last Thursday when I was supposed to do all this. The roster cuts was just implemented in last second. And also the SMU claiming they own DFW. So be sure to leave a like, leave a subscribe, and I will see you guys next Thursday at 8:30, or for my military folks, 20:30. We are the cream of the crop in all of football podcasting. So leave a like, leave a subscribe, put that notification on that bell right there down below. And we are the PMP. Thank you so much for watching tonight, and God bless y'all. Thank you.